بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we're just covering some virtues regarding the month of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. So I'll just point this one important point out. So our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned in a hadith that regarding in the month of Ramadan that an optional act, a non-obligatory act, a nafil act in the month of Ramadan is rewarded as much as a fard act in normal times. Whereas a fard act in the month of Ramadan, it carries a reward of 70 other fard acts of other times. So in other words, the state of a optional act in the month of Ramadan is equivalent to the reward of the reward of a fard act in normal times, and the state and the reward of a fard act in the month of Ramadan is timed by 70. Subhanallah. So now this is something to ponder about, and this is something to think that how much importance do we really give to these opportunities, and sometimes to take inspiration and to build this drive, we need to look into the way other people valued this opportunity. So there's this incident where there's this sheikh he's mentioning, and he's the lifestyle of his sheikh. So he mentions that his sheikh he was a weak and sickly person in old age, but in spite of that, the sheikh, he used to recite at least 1.25 juz, 1.25 parts of the Quran in nafil namaz, in optional namaz, and this would be after Maghrib. So after Maghrib, he'd remain in Salah, and he would recite 1.25 para. So 1.25. So there's 30 parts of the Holy Quran. So 1.25 of that would be just spent in reciting in nafil namaz after Maghrib, and after that he'd spend about half an hour in eating. So this is obviously, we break fast after Maghrib, isn't it? So he'd probably break his fast on a small day, and then after that he'd engage himself in ibadah, and after finishing all that he'd eat a bit more, and thereafter he would spend about half an hour. So we mentioned that thereafter he spent about half an hour on eating and fulfilling other necessities and this was in preparation for Tarawih. So obviously Tarawih would be straight after Isha. So after that, when he would stand in Tarawih, he'd be in Tarawih for about 2.5 hours. And this was when he was at home in India. However, when he moved to Medina Munawwara, then he would spend about 3 hours performing Tarawih. After that, he would sleep for about 2 or 3 hours, according to the season. So sometimes 2, sometimes 3 hours. So he'd take rest after Tarawih, and then after that he would recite the Quran in Tahajjud Salah until there was half an hour left before the time of Fajr. So when there was half an hour left before the time of Fajr, this is when he would partake and eat his sahri. And after taking his sahri, he would remain busy in reciting the Quran, or he'd remain busy in reciting, some du'as, some adhkar, some tasbihat, etc. And then when the time of Fajr would come, then he would obviously perform his Fajr Salah, and then after that he'd remain in that same position after Fajr, meaning after praying Salah, he'd remain sitting in his place, engaged in zikr, you can say, and engaged in meditation, in muraqabah, until ishraq until sunrise. Then after performing the ishraq prayers, so after sunrise, there's an optional prayer which you can perform basically. So after performing that, he would write a part of his he would get on with his work. In other words, that he was busy in writing a commentary of Abu Dawud Sharif. Abu Dawud Sharif is a very, it's one of the Sahih Sitta, one of the 6 authentic books of Hadith, and he wrote a commentary on this book called Badlul Majhud. So he'd engage himself in writing this commentary, and this would remain he'd keep on doing that until about midday, and then after that he'd attend to some needs, some letters, or some replies and things which people, might have asked them questions and so on and so forth. After that he'd rest, probably take a nap until Zuhr. Then after that, from Zuhr until Asr, he would engage himself in reciting the Quran, and then from Asr till Maghrib he'd be busy with tasbih, dhikr. And also at the same time he would be engaged in some conversations with people who would come and visit him as well. And this was, his daily program throughout the year. And he mentioned that when he had completed finishing this commentary of Abu Dawud Sharif, then he was busy studying other things. So that time he was always occupied. And in Ramadan, however, he used to spend more time in his ibadah, making the rakats longer. So this is just an example of a sheikh and how he'd spend his time in the month of Ramadan. And for a normal person, it's very, very hard to spend their day in that manner, but at least we can take inspiration and think that, okay, this is how he spends his time. How do I spend my time? I'm sure that there's definitely other ways where I can improve, and there's other ways where I can utilize my time for doing good, and utilize my time in gaining, in being more productive and engaging in good deeds, inshallah ta'ala. So may Allah ta'ala give us inspiration, and may Allah ta'ala give us a tawfiq to, inshallah ta'ala, utilize this opportunity which we have, and try our utmost to maximize this Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala, and use it according to our own capacity, inshallah. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.